This is the Final Word Daily. India, Australia, Nagpur, Day 2. Jeff Lemon and Adam Collins.
Nagpur.
Nagpur.
You do the roll thing better than I do. Yeah. It's like the labba thing you do.
Labba skachna, yeah. And just a big cat stalking Nagpur, which is apparently surrounded by tigers who are constantly being chased by people trying to take photos of the tigers. Sounds like a very relaxing existence for the tigers. I'm sure they love it. I'm sure it's great. Nonetheless, the point is not about the tigers because that's Bangladesh, where they don't have any tigers anymore. But the point is the Indian team, who do not have an animal avatar, nor do they have a flower like the Proteas, but they are nonetheless the team playing Australia, who also don't really have an avatar, but some Indian fans like to call them the kangaroos, even though that's not what they're called. Nonetheless, here we are.
Because an emu and a kangaroo on the coat of arms can't take a backward step.
Can't take a backward step, also because they're cast in metal, which tends to stop you from taking a backward step. Ask Han Solo. Anyway, we've got to do day 2 of the Test match, and you, Adam, have to tell us about an entire day of Test cricket in the space of 30 seconds.
Challenge accepted. Jeff, India resumed at 1 for 77, 100 runs behind. They lost 2 wickets in the first, second and third sessions. All looked broadly the same, but the challenge was Australia trying to bowl them out for a deficit under 100. That doesn't happen. India lead by 144. They're 7 down for 321 at the close of play. Jadeja and Akshar Patel have put on 81 unbeaten, 64 and 52, I think it is, respectively. After Todd Murphy took a fifer on Test debut, he's got 5 out of 7. He could do a Bob Massey tomorrow, but Australia 144 runs in the red already. They did 3 quick wickets tomorrow and a lot to go right thereafter.
Perfect. I think that was bang on the 30 seconds. Well done there. Look, it must have been such a frustrating day for Australia when it's the lower order partnerships that take it away from you. That's when it really burns at a team, really fires their soul. Because at 5 wickets down, India was still 9 behind. You know, Kohli gets out just after lunch. They've got Pujara, they've got Ashwin, the night watchman at first drop in the first session, where India scored slowly. So even though only 2 wickets fell, it didn't matter so much. Kohli nicks that one down the leg side from Todd Murphy.
Down the leg side.
Down the leg side to Trailer Park Girls go down the leg side. You should interpret that whatever way you want. Now, the point is this. The point is that at 5 wickets down, you're not thinking that it'll be parity, but you're thinking that Australia could keep India to a lead of, say, 30, 40, 50.
I was thinking more like 80, 90, 100. But the reason I was thinking that was batting, like the batting fourth factor might be worth 100 runs, you know. Like this pitch has shown a couple of signs late today of balls really turning and bouncing. Not your sort of conventional turn that Jadeja was getting, and Murphy was getting, and Lyon was getting, and Ashwin was getting. This was like extra spin, the stuff you expect on a pitch which is going to rag eventually. If you're batting fourth on it, chasing 150, I mean, you know, good luck. And India are batting fourth. And they've only chased once in their, I want to say once in their last 9 Test matches, I'm pretty sure. They went through a stretch of batting first 7 times in a row last year. So, you know, batting fourth isn't something they've had to do an awful lot. They made hard work of their chase of 150 in Chittagong over the Christmas period. So all of those factors combined, you're thinking, well, a lead of 100, Australia would probably take that. But twice, you're right, it was 5 down when they were 9 runs still ahead, and it was at 7 down when they go bang bang with the second new ball. Cummins has Rohit Sharma, neglected to mention him in my summary, 120 of the best runs you'll ever see.
You don't need to do that, because yesterday you told us he was going to make 100 today, and you're right.
I was spot on.
We don't need to talk about that at all, really.
It was never under any doubt whatsoever. But on 120, Cummins bowls the ball that he bowled to Joe Root at Old Trafford. And as Bharat put on our SEN commentary, it's like he has the ability to take the pitch out of the equation. We saw that in Pakistan a couple of times last year, and that ball to Rohit Sharma, the ball after he had a drop catch, and he was all fired up, and he swore into the stump mic, rare for Pat, and had it cartwheeling.
Bother, he said into the stump mic. Bother.
He said, fuck that.
Oh, did he?
Actually, he was unhappy. Non-strikers, he wasn't thrilled. You don't hear Pat swear too often, not publicly at least. But yeah, that was the window, wasn't it? 2 left-handers with Murphy bowling the way that Murphy was. Goodness me. Murphy is an unbelievable bowler. He's 22. He does everything. All the things off-spinners try and do over a whole career, he's doing them all already. We'll talk more about him in a sec, I suspect.
Sure.
But, you know, 2 left, and that's when it fades away. How many times have we seen it with Jadeja? Walking in situations just like that. He's so good.
Jadeja. Fighter of Jadeja. No, it doesn't work that way. If you're Always Sunny in Philadelphia, you know what I'm talking about. But the point is this.
I know about the guy. I've watched Welcome to Wrexham, which is kind of like watching It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia now.
Right. So Jadeja played in the 2013 series against Australia, didn't make any runs. Played in the first 2 tests in 2017, didn't make any runs. Rancho Relaxo, the 3rd test match, makes a 50. From that point, since the Ranchi test in 2017, he's been to Australia twice, played Melbourne and Sydney both times. 8 innings, 5 50s, he's averaging 71 with the bat against Australia since Ranchi. throw in his career average of 18 with the ball against Australia, and you have a fairly handy package of a cricketer. Plus being the best fielder in the world, just as a bonus, just put that on top. The little icing on the carrot cake there. I mean, it is extraordinary the way he's been able to up his game against Australia. He's never made a ton against them, but he hasn't needed to because he's made important 50s that have actually influence games. I mean, remember when he put him in the hurt locker in Sydney in 2019, I think it was, when India made 700.
Absolutely punished Australia with Rishabh at the end there, didn't he?
Yeah, I mean, just put them to the sword, literally, because he's doing the sword thing, which he got to do when he got to his 50 again. And what I'd like...
Not a fan of it at 50.
Well, the thing is he didn't have many opportunities to do it at 100 because it took him about 10 years to make his first test ton.
True.
And he still only made 3 of them, but he's made a lot of 50s. So if you do the balance, if you work the metrics, you're like, well, if I want to do, say, 20 sword things in my career, I'm going to need to start doing them at 50. I'll tell you what he might do, because we like outlandish speculations at this point. He has 68 wickets against Australia. Say he has a good series here, and say he plays one more series, he could take 100 wickets against Australia alone.
Well,
you can't rule it out. He could take, say he gets to 85 by the end of this series.
Let's do the scheduling bit out of that. So India come to Australia again in a couple of summers' time. He'll be 35 or 36. I think he's 34 now.
He's almost 35 now.
Right, so he'll definitely be 36, maybe 37 then. The question is, does he get to play Australia and India again? Now, in the FTP, I mean, yeah, he'd be 38 or 39. Will they squeeze in another Border Gavaskar series in India before then? They'll give it a red hot go.
They can.
They'll give it a red hot go.
If they can squeeze in 7 ODIs.
I'll put it this way. We're moving towards a world where the BCCI, along with CA and the ECB, play each other most years anyway. So it might be that there's a configuration.
The Bledisloe Cup.
Yeah, the Tri-Nations of cricket. That's what they'll call it. They'll call it the Tri-Nations. And we'll be a much better game for that, won't we? Anyway, it's possible he'll take 100. You know, that stat last night, I don't know if I said it on the podcast, I might not have.
Yep.
Nobody has taken more wickets against Australia at a lower average since 1900.
Okay. I'm just saying...
123 years ago.
Yeah, I know.
That was probably George Lohman.
Well, it was George Lohman, and it was Bobby Peel, and of course...
Bobby Peel pissing on the pitch.
Classic.
JJ Ferris playing for both teams.
Exactly, yes. Why not? Why play for one team when you can play for both teams?
If you want to know why Bobby Peel pissed on the pitch, listen to our other show called Storytime. It's in the feed, you'll like it.
A lot of cricket history in that show. But the point I'm trying to get at is this. Say he's got 7 more innings in this series. That's 70 Australian wickets. Say he got, I don't know, 15 of them, he'd be on 85 by the end of this series.
Yeah.
And then all he needs is another half-decent one where he picks
up the other 15. And they could play in the WTC final.
They could play in the WTC final.
I would say that
couple there.
I don't think Australia are going to lose 4-0. They need to win or draw a test over here to guarantee they could theoretically make it after losing 4-0. They've done so well to this point. India need to win at least 3. A 3-1 result, I think, would guarantee they play again.
That's the West Germany, Austria 0-0 draw sort of situation if they agree on 3-1 and shake hands on it ahead of time, which Australia might be more inclined to do at the moment because coming back from 140 down. But the thing I liked about Jadeja's innings
better than the West Germany-Austria agreement they had a few decades before that.
Yeah, there's probably not a lot of good things coming out of Germany in the 30s, let's be honest. Cabaret, there was some good cabaret music. Let's not paint with a broad brush.
The Weimar Republic had its complexities.
Look, if it gave us...
It was undermined from the get-go.
It gave us the on-screen pairing of Liza Minnelli and Michael York, which is something that we cannot take lightly as a civilization. If you've not seen it, go and see it. Joel Grey as the MC, one of the rare transitions from stage to screen. Not a lot of people who have the lead in a Broadway production are able to carry that into the film production. They don't have the screen presence. Joel Grey's MC, I mean, outstanding. Anyway, Jadeja's innings today, what I liked about it is that he didn't play like a tail ender. He's not, obviously, but he didn't say, I've got to take him on, I've got to smack him around. He absorbed so much bowling. He just said, I'm going to frustrate the hell out of these guys. I'm going to be here tonight. I'm going to be back tomorrow. I'll see you tomorrow. And he did. I mean, so he ends up with 66, but his strike rate's 38. He hit a few boundaries here and there, but he spent so much time just soaking up the bowling, defending, taking a single, working it around, and it must have driven them up the wall. And then Akshar Patel comes in to join him, and you know there's nothing left to come. You know that Mohammad Shami is going to try to put one on the moon and get clean bowled, and you know that Mohammad Siraj is going to just walk around confused and do performance art with the bat. You know it's over once the next wicket falls, but it didn't fall. Akshar gets to a 50. I mean, the Australians must just be tearing their hair out.
It was instantaneous. The moment that Akshar walked in with Jadeja, the game just changed. I wouldn't say 180 degrees because it was always broadly trending India's way, with the exception of the wickets that fell in clumps. But just the energy changed. You know, sometimes in a test playing day, it can feel like it's push and pull and nip and tuck, and then in a moment, it feels like the fielding team's under the pump. That's how it was with Australia. It didn't matter how well Murphy and Lyon, to be fair, at times, most of the time, actually, I thought, were bowling, and Cummins, and how tidy Scott Boland was. You know, the pressure they created in that first session. On air, I was comparing him to what Andrew McDonald used to do, the Australian coach, when he briefly played for Australia, keeper up to the stumps, giving them absolutely nothing. Well, Boland was playing that role. Unlucky.
9 runs off 10 overs. His first 10.
I think that when they got their first wicket of the day, Ashwin, that was Murphy, the first of 2 successful reviews that Murphy and Cummins conspired for. That was after a period of play where 3 runs were scored in 5 overs, and Boland had been so good across his 6-over spell. You know, Murphy gets Ashwin, and then not long after that gets Pujara sweeping to Boland. That's his 3rd wicket, and then straight after lunch, Kohli, who's on 12, gets strangled down the leg side. I'm not quite sure how that happened exactly. Alex Carey bobbled the catch, and you know, it's got that kind of feel that, oh wow, India are under the pump again. But yeah, once Akshar Patel, who's made a test half-century before, he's batted up in the top 6 in the IPL before. I get that he's a better player than coming in carded number 9 and the aforementioned Jadeja. Like, we should expect there'd be some sort of rearguard, but it was so pronounced how different the day felt when they came together with 2 hours to go.
That's it, yeah. And if we come back to that first session, I mean, the sequence from Murphy, you're working through the established players. You get that line way outside leg stump was weirdly successful for him. I mean, he didn't bowl there most of the time. He was very tight on the stumps most of the time. He was bowling that good length, bowling relatively full, making players drive. I can remember, I think, 4 balls that dropped short all day. Like, I remember him getting cut once by Jadeja, by Pujara for a boundary. A couple of others cut for singles. He was very rarely cut today. Which
is the really hard thing for young spinners, just to jump in. Young spinners, when they often land on the international stage, finger spinners especially, because they're desperate not to be driven, they do have the ability to drop short. We saw it early in Lyon's career. Certainly Don Bess from England experienced a bit of that in India a couple of years ago. They can lose their way so quickly. And this is where young spinners come to get buried by India's batters, and they just couldn't get on top of Murphy because he just seems so composed.
Well, and then it was the odd one that slipped outside leg where, Pujara says freebie and lap sweeps it around the corner and hits it to short fine. Kohli just prods at it and edges it behind that first ball after lunch. And then Surya Kumar Yadav comes in, and he's the 1 wicket that Nathan Lyon took today with an absolutely beautiful piece of bowling. Around the wicket, wide on the crease to a right-hander, drifts it across dreamily in the air. Oh yeah, says SKY. Oh, I'm just waiting for this to come full. I'll have a little drive at it. It straightens so sharply, beats him through the gate. Not the classical off-spinner dismissal from over the wicket, but the same variation from around.
It's kind of the classic Nathan Lyon wicket from 2013 when he kept bowling around the wicket, both in India, where when he came back into the side, took the 7 for Delhi, then when he came into the test side for the 3rd test in England after Agar replaced him for a couple, he was operating almost by default from round the wicket, and he got a lot of wickets just like that, which looked super impressive. SKY would want that ball back, to be fair. Like, that's not the shot to play, an expansive cover drive, when you're feeling your way into an innings against a bowler like Lyon who can really rag it. But nevertheless, it was, again, one of those wickets that were really well timed. Some wickets are better timed than others, and it felt like SKY was a crucial juncture just before the lunch break, and so it proved for a brief time. But the only moment that Lyon really influenced the day. But I mean, we know why Surya Kumar Yadav's in the side. It's not to plot around for a couple of hours. It is to destroy spinners.
Exactly. So off stump gets pegged back, 5 down, and then there's the Jadeja Rohit Sharma partnership. They put on 61. I mean, Rohit was similar to Jadeja. He played a couple of big shots here and there, but just collected, defended, waited. It was purely that patience game. I mean, he took on Cummins and hooked him for 6 at one point with the short ball, but it wasn't until Cummins got the new ball in his hand, which came up just at one of the breaks.
It was just after tea, first over after tea.
Hit 80 overs at the tea break, and then Cummins, like you say, has him dropped by Smith. That was a proper drop. There'd been a few that have gone past Smith, but that one dipped on him, didn't get hands in the right spot, let it through. They've come back for the 2nd run, and then the next ball, Cummins just knocks his off stump out of the ground. I mean, it's a pretty special piece of bowling.
Oh, I mean, on the surface that had no bounce in it whatsoever. The frustration for Australia early in the day was, balls that should have been back in the length and testing them around the waist, even the ribs, were sort of coming through at pad flap height. They weren't getting I watched them do a training drill before play when they had the cone set up for back of the length stuff, and it wasn't working. So Cummins with the second new ball had to really bend his back to get something out of it. He would have been pretty tired by that stage as well. Remembering he'd conceded 50 runs in his first 11 overs. Like, he was going around. He was Australia's most expensive bowler. But, Cummins doesn't bowl, had 2 bad days in a row as a Test cricketer. I doubt he's ever had 2 bad days in a row. And the second new ball worked. Murphy used it at the other end, and that's when he picks up his 5th wicket. KS Bharat on debut, the second time they reviewed a league before decision with him round the wicket. And what you said before about Murphy, just to build on that, it's the angles round the wicket that he's using, the width of the crease, the release points changing all the time, and that's not because he's inconsistent, it's because he's got different balls to turn to, which all feel as consistent as his stock off break. So the one that's sliding across the right-hander, pitching leg, going on to hit about leg or middle, which has got heaps of overspin on it, or when he undercuts the ball and goes the other way, all of these are kind of potentially wicket-taking options, whereas I think for most spinners, it's the big off-break, and maybe if they've got a top spinner, but it's not much else. This guy's got 3 or 4 balls that he's bowling routinely, which mean that they have to play him with utmost respect.
And the key point was that Jadeja and Akshay lasted long enough that towards the end of the day you could see Murphy was starting to get tired. He'd hit 30 overs, his shoulders were getting sore. The batters were able to get on top. It'll be hard for Australia to start tomorrow. I mean, it's pretty unusual to find a way back from 140 runs down on the first innings. They'd need a truly special batting performance in the third innings from one player with a couple in support to try to get to some sort of lead. But like you say, if there's any lead, if there's a 120 lead, you can't rule it out.
The game's got to be, for them, Australia going to have to make 300 in the second dig, right? To be in the game. Yeah. If they can make 300 after finishing India off quickly tomorrow morning, they might have 140 to work with. 140 to work with, I'm certain that will make for an interesting and competitive, by that stage, 4th day. If they make 250, well, it probably won't. It'll feel like Dharamshala did back in 2017 when India were chasing 108. Yeah. And even though the conditions were getting harder, it didn't feel like it was hard because the number's too small. There needs to be a vaguely credible chase to be able to turn any screws.
Or if Jadeja goes on to 100 and actually makes 70, then
could win by an innings.
They're screwed at that point. Yeah, I mean, it
could be over tomorrow.
Could easily be an India innings win at this point. Final Word Hall of Fame. It's brought to you by Woodstock Cricket. If you want 20% off one of the best cricket bats in the world, woodstockcricket.co.uk. You put in TFW20 and they give you 20% off the bat. How good's that? Anyway.
Best bats in the world. Independently verified. Number 1 and number 2 on the podium.
What's the most final word moment that happened today? I thought maybe just Steve Smith and the slips being in a shooting gallery, basically. There were so many that went past him, went in between him and the keeper, went over him. And then they put Peter Hanscom in at a short second slip wearing the helmet. I mean, it was getting as funky as hell in there. And it just wouldn't stick. He just couldn't get one that he could hang on to.
What about Smith when he was at second slip at one stage being, 4 metres in front of Carey? Like, they tried everything when the ball wasn't bouncing. So I like that as well. I also enjoyed Jadeja's Djokovic-esque toilet break at one point, where just when they got on top, it's like, I could do with 5 minutes just to keep them sweating out there, make sure the game goes until 5 p.m. local time, make sure they have to bowl their overs quickly. I'm not saying he wasn't taking a piss, but it was a very convenient time to go off the field, as it often is with Djokovic after winning a set. I've just won a set and demoralised my opponent. I'll be back in 6 minutes. Time for 2 TV commercials, you know what I mean?
He may have been taking a piss, but he may also have been taking the piss.
Exactly. And look, that's part of the game, I suppose. How about this little factoid that all 4 Australian frontline bowlers in this game have taken a fifer on debut. Cummins 6 in Johannesburg, Boland 6 at Melbourne, Lyons 5 at Galle, and now Murphy at least 5. He could, as I say, could do a Bob Massey tomorrow. There are 3 on the shelf. He could do a Jason Frazier, living the Vida Loca, living the crazy life, as Frazier did here in the first Test match at Nagpur back in 2008. We should be so lucky.
Love it when the ice cream truck drives through the middle of the show. That'll make for nice audio. We can chase that.
I want that.
Now,
ring the bell.
I'll point out that I think that was also the case at Headingley in 2019, because that was Pattinson, Cummins, Hazelwood and Lyon. And they all had
that's very good.
So I don't think it's happened that many times. 35 Australian players with debut fifers.
And about 8 of them have played in the last 12 years.
Yes.
I like it.
Another truck driving through our show, so I think this means it's probably a pretty good place to end it.
Just as we wind it up, thank you everybody who found the final word for the first time yesterday. Loads of new subscribers on YouTube. Lots of new people finding the podcast feed as well. We make lots of shows. We make the daily program you're watching now and listening to now. We make a weekly show, which is often interview-based, but where Jeff and I spend longer discussing the issues around the global game, men's and women, domestic, international. If it's happening, we're probably talking about it or interviewing some of the biggest names in the game. And Storytime, the aforementioned history show that goes out each weekend, where we dive deep into the stories that make our game such an interesting one to cover.
And if you want to be part of that and help us make the show, go to patreon.com/thefinalword.
Hell yeah.
That's it from us. Day 2 at Nagpur. Let's get out of here, and we'll see you again on day 3.
Good night.